This is the College Football Countdown to Kickoff show on 97.3 ESPN with your host, Nick Costco. We're taking you up to the kickoff of Rutgers football. Now, live inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, here's Nick Costco.
Live inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, it's the College Football Countdown to Kickoff show. I'm your host, Nick Costco. We're taking you up to the kickoff of Rutgers football, taking on number 20 Iowa on the road. And that's right, I'm back here in studio after last Friday. We did our special kickoff show live from SHI Stadium at Rutgers University. Got a lot to dive into today. We'll talk about the top four in college football, some of the big games here of week 2, and also we'll take a look at Rutgers' game against Iowa here coming up in just about an hour. We'll send it out to Chris Carlin and Ray Lucas out in Iowa. I gotta say, I love that stadium. I have not been there, but I would love to get out there. And I'll tell you what, they're going to be part of a great tradition today. Just so you know, just so you folks know, this game's going to be on, I believe, FS1 today on TV. You look at that tradition out there, the traditional wave from the players and the fans, everybody in that stadium waving over to the Children's Hospital across the street from that stadium. That is absolutely phenomenal. I love that every time I see it. I'm glad Rutgers is not going to be finally a part of it. They're only playing Iowa for the second time in school history. First time was back in 2016 where Iowa edged Rutgers 14-7 in Piscataway. We're going to have Ross Dellenger of Sports Illustrated join us in about 15 minutes or so, and he's going to talk to us about the top four, basically the big four of all season: Clemson, Bama, Georgia, and Oklahoma. We're going to talk about the Texas A&M-Clemson game tonight, also about LSU-Texas, the marquee game, and of course I'll give you my picks in the final segment of the show, where we always pick those against the spread. We're actually keeping track of them this season. Don't you worry about that. I'm keeping track of them. I'm going to be honest this year, and I will be honest, I was pretty good last week. I was 3-1 last week.
Can we just clarify that you're never dishonest?
That's true. We can do that too.
You're not one of these guys who gets on the microphone and just throws stuff at the wall.
Spouts nonsense?
Yeah.
All right, that's good. All right, Josh backs me up there. I was 3-1 last week, and I have I'm actually going to preview the games I'm going to do this week, and I'll give you my picks, of course, later. I'm going to do the LSU-Texas game, UCF Florida Atlantic, Syracuse Maryland, and Rutgers-Iowa. Of course, we're going to pick the Rutgers game every single week that we are on the air. Just a reminder, we are off the air next week as Rutgers is on a bye. We'll be back on the 21st when Rutgers takes on Boston College. That game time to be determined at the moment, and I will be out live from SHI Stadium again at Rutgers University, so I'm glad I'm able to do that all season long for the Rutgers home games. All right, let's dive into a little bit of Rutgers-Iowa first, and then we'll dive into LSU-Texas and Texas A&M and Clemson later here tonight. So I have to start out with you look at Rutgers last week, Friday night opening game of 2019. Chris Ash, the head coach, his job most certainly on the line, and it was 14-0. It was 21-7, and everyone thought, here we go. Same old typical Rutgers. You're going to lose to the 130th ranked team in the FBS on a Friday night at home with a brand-new grad transfer quarterback starting. This is absolutely fantastic, but I'll tell you what, they came away with the 48-21 win. They look good after that dreadful first quarter, and dare I say, did Rutgers actually look good on Friday night? Yeah, you could say they looked good. It was UMass, don't get me wrong. Rutgers is still near the bottom of the FBS right now, but Rutgers actually looked good somehow. It's amazing. I didn't think I'd be saying that too often this season. Now, did I think they were going to be UMass coming into the season? Yes. I thought Rutgers would probably go 3-9 this year. Then you'd say goodbye to Chris Ash. He would not be back in Piscataway ever again unless he come back as an assistant coach for another team. Let me just clarify that. But 3-9, I'm thinking, all right, they're going to beat UMass. I would hope they would beat Liberty, and then you beat one of Boston College, Illinois, Maryland, or Indiana. You win one of those games. But those are all games that are winnable, so you could hypothetically say, hey, they're going to win. They could win 6 games this year and go to a bowl game. Slow down, Nick. Let's not go crazy here. This is Rutgers we're talking about. This is a team that was 1-11 last year in 2018, and they were 4-6 and 2-10 the 2 previous years under Chris Ash. Let's not go nuts here. But McLean Carter, Texas Tech transfer quarterback for Rutgers, takes over for Art Sikowski, the true freshman from last year, and they might redshirt him this year. I'll tell you what. They're not going to use him in garbage time. They're only going to use him when necessary. If they could save his eligibility, they'll redshirt him, and he'll be a redshirt sophomore next season, and he still could be the quarterback of the future. But Carter was 21 of 31, 240 yards, 2 touchdowns, 3 picks. I get it. They were bad picks, but what you saw was the gunslinger mentality of the Big 12 coming to the Big 10 and Rutgers. You have not seen a gunslinger mentality since Gary Nova. Once Gary Nova left after 2014, since then you have not seen that. Sikowski's certainly not last year. He was way overmatched. And obviously, I have to give a shout out to the South Jersey products, of course, from Vineland and Cedar Creek, respectively. Isaiah Pacheco, 20 carries, 156 yards, and 4 touchdowns on the ground. And Bo Melton, 6 catches, 127 yards, and a touchdown on last Friday night. South Jersey, 609, represent right there. Isaiah Pacheco, early Heisman candidate, dare I say it. Oh, my goodness. Nick, stop. Get off the air. We can't do this. We can't do this anymore. You want to talk about hot takes? Isaiah Pacheco is my Heisman candidate after week 1. Give me some of that. Again, Rutgers overcame 2 14-point deficits. That's good. What are they going to do against Iowa today? Well, again, only their second all-time meeting. And again, I mentioned before, 3 years ago, they lost by 7 points. And if it weren't for an injury to wide receiver Janarian Grant, they might win that football game. That was also Chris Ash's first year when they went 2-10. But for Iowa, coached by Kirk Ferentz, one of the most stable and I would say one of the best coaches in the country, without a doubt. And considering Rutgers and Chris Ash want to model their own program after Iowa, this could be a nice little measuring stick game here in about an hour. Nate Stanley, a very underrated quarterback. He had 252 yards last week and 3 touchdowns. He's very methodical. He doesn't really turn the ball over. Very solid. The whole Kirk Ferentz program is always solid. You don't make too many mistakes. Iowa's never flashy. They just play sound, physical football. Mekhi Sargent is the other guy I have to watch out for. Their running back. He led the team in rushing last week with 91 yards and a touchdown. He also had 65 yards receiving. And again, the sound offensive and defensive line play from Iowa could be a problem for Rutgers today. Now, will Rutgers' size be a disadvantage today? That's going to be a big question. Rutgers has always been kind of undersized. After that first year in the Big Ten in 2014, they have always been undersized on both sides of the ball on the line play. You don't get these big country boys that you get out in Iowa who grow up on farms, lifting hay, building fences, doing all that stuff. No. You get that out in Iowa and the Midwest, and teams like Nebraska, and of course teams like Ohio State and Penn State and Michigan can recruit those guys at will. Rutgers, let's see what they can do on the offensive and defensive lines today. I got to say, if you see a turnover-free game from Rutgers, I'm not picking an upset, and I'm not going to spoil my pick yet, but if you see a turnover-free game from Rutgers, you could see a pretty competitive game this week. And again, that's going to be the measuring stick for the Scarlet Knights because they are going to go into an early bye week next week. Then they come back home, and it's a big recruiting battle type game against Boston College at home in 2 weeks. If you say they lose, I don't know, let's say 31-20 today, it's competitive. Fine. You can build some sort of confidence. You have 2 weeks to prepare for Boston College in what arguably could be a must-win game in 2019 for the Scarlet Knights. I'll take that any day. If they lose a close game today, fine. I'm not expecting much from Rutgers this season, but I would like to see some positive strides after last week. Quickly, before we hit the break, we have LSU at Texas tonight, number 6 at number 9. Of course, number 12, Texas A&M at number 1, Clemson. These are the two biggest games here tonight here in week 2. Again, the marquee game of the night is LSU-Texas. We're going to dive into more of that when we talk to Ross Dellenger of Sports Illustrated in just a few minutes. For Texas, so we'll go to Texas A&M and Clemson real quick. This was a close game last season, but again, when you look at this game back in 2018, Trevor Lawrence, Clemson's quarterback, was not playing. This was a Kelly Bryant special for Clemson. That game was close, almost an upset for Texas A&M. But for Trevor Lawrence, now that you have him, you would think Clemson's going to roll now, right? Well, not necessarily, because he was up and down last week, and everyone keeps saying the best play he made last week in that blowout was a tackle after an interception. But don't forget, Travis Etienne is a great running back. And I know I was teasing everybody with a Heisman candidate of Isaiah Pacheco from Vineland over at Rutgers University. Travis Etienne is your best running back in the country right now after last week's performance. That guy is deadly. And if they're going to win this football game, no turnovers from Trevor Lawrence, and a nice day, maybe about 150 yards and a couple touchdowns for Travis Etienne. Clemson's going to be looking good. They're at home. But Jimbo Fisher wants that marquee win for Texas A&M. If he gets that marquee win, it's going to be tonight. And if they do that, I'll tell you what, Texas A&M, you cannot count them out in the SEC if they happen to knock off Clemson. So watch out, Alabama. Texas A&M has a big measuring stick game here tonight. All right, we are about to step aside and take a quick break. Ross Dellenger of Sports Illustrated is on the other side. We'll talk to him about the top four. We'll talk to him about the two big games, and we'll even include some Army-Michigan. I find that game very intriguing. Of course, we'll have our pick segment later in the show. We'll take you up to the kickoff of Rutgers football. Rutgers and Iowa at 12 noon today. Keep it locked here. You're listening to the College Football Countdown to Kickoff show right here on 97.3 ESPN.
This is the College Football Countdown to Kickoff show with Nick Costco on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
College Football Countdown to Kickoff show right here on 97.3 ESPN. I'm your host, Nick Costco, taking you up to the kickoff of Rutgers, Iowa here this afternoon at 12 noon. We're sending it out to Chris Carlin and Ray Lucas live out there in Iowa. We're pleased to be joined now by Sports Illustrated's Ross Dellenger. Glad to have him back on here in 2019. Ross, thanks for joining me today, man.
Yeah, man. How you doing?
Good. All right, let's just get right into it. We got to start with the top four, obviously, because I said this last week that I think the top four that was the preseason top four is going to end up being your college football playoff top four at this point. Clemson, Bama, Georgia, and Oklahoma. So out of those four teams from week one, who were you most impressed with last week?
Well, I think I'd probably say Oklahoma. I know that they were playing against a Houston defense that it isn't very good, or it wasn't last year, and I think they were like 125th last year. So you got to keep that in mind, that they're not playing probably the best defense out there. They certainly have some much better challengers later in the season. But Jalen Hurts looked incredible in that Lincoln Riley offense. Lincoln Riley just keeps getting transfer quarterbacks, putting them in his scheme, kind of tweaking, adjusting his offensive scheme around them, and excelling incredibly well. So of those four, I would say that was, to me, even by far the most impressive, because you saw some hiccups from Clemson, some rust maybe from Trevor Lawrence a little bit. You saw Alabama at times in the first half struggled just a bit, especially to run the football. So I think the Sooners for sure stuck out.
Now, you mentioned Jalen Hurts, and he obviously could be a Heisman candidate this year because of course, Lincoln Riley. But could you see a point in this season where no one's really talked about Jalen Hurts, NFL-type quarterback, but because of Lincoln Riley and based on the way the offenses are, I would say, evolving in the college game and, of course, in the NFL now, you saw Baker Mayfield go number one overall. You saw Kyler Murray go number one overall. I'm not suggesting Jalen Hurts goes number one overall next year, but could you see Jalen Hurts' NFL draft stock take a huge leap up just because of Lincoln Riley and this offense in 2019?
Yeah, I mean, and here's the thing. I think with Jalen Hurts and with Lincoln Riley, they both can benefit from Cliff Kingsbury. In the NFL, and how Cliff Kingsbury, how successful his offense is in the NFL. If it's real successful, I think that makes that RPO, air raid, whatever type scheme, a little more attractive for NFL teams. And so someone like Jalen Hurts, who is obviously playing in that kind of that scheme, I think would be more attractive for some NFL teams. And Lincoln Riley's future in the NFL, I think, is tied to Cliff and in how he'll do at Arizona with Kyler Murray. So that's the biggest thing. It's something that they can't even control. But how Arizona, how successful they are this year, I think will determine a lot about those two guys, Lincoln and Jalen.
Let's switch gears for a moment as well. We were just talking about Clemson, but they have a really juicy matchup here tonight as they are still the number one team in the country, but they host number 12 Texas A&M. They're coming in almost an upset last year, as we mentioned earlier in the show. It's now the Trevor Lawrence show fully for Clemson. This was a Kelly Bryant game last year, so let's look at it from this perspective. You mentioned Trevor Lawrence struggled a little bit last week in the season opener, but knowing that this game is at home, it's that marquee early game of the season for the Clemson Tigers. Probably their only, I would say, realistic challenge this season to an undefeated season before the postseason. Do you sense a possible upset? And if so, if that happens, can Texas A&M be that challenger to Bama and Georgia in the SEC?
Yeah, I don't. Clemson's got maybe their toughest two games of the regular season, at least back-to-back here. And I think beyond these two teams, it's not much. Clemson's schedule it's not real strong. A&M, and then of course they'll go travel to Syracuse next week, and it's certainly not a slight against Syracuse, but for them to be the second best team on Clemson's schedule probably tells you a lot about where Clemson's schedule stacks up nationally. So this is probably the toughest test they'll have this week, though, as far as the regular season, and that's why it makes it so much more important for them. The pressure's on because you don't want to lose to the toughest team on your schedule. It just doesn't look good, and if you do drop a game and you're going into the final stretch with one loss, and the loss is to the best team on your schedule. Maybe you didn't beat any top 20 teams. It doesn't look good. So there's more pressure on them today to win.
Another intriguing game I found out today, it's Army at number 7, Michigan. Army, of course, almost knocked off Oklahoma in Oklahoma just last season. Army's been a pretty darn good football team the past couple of years, and I'll tell you what, that's a credit to the coaching job as well. But Michigan, again, I mean, I said this last year that it was probably do or die for Jim Harbaugh up there, but I'll tell you what, they're a top 10 team. Once again, it's probably them or Ohio State in the Big Ten, so this is probably their best shot at the college football playoff in a Big Ten title game. But could you actually see Army playing just as well as they did last year against Oklahoma, but this time in Ann Arbor?
That would be tough for me to see. I think Michigan's got a better defense than Oklahoma had last year, for one. And two, you saw Army struggle last week. I think they played Rice maybe, and they really struggled. They needed a last typical Army 8-minute touchdown drive to win the game. I think it was 14-7 or something like that was the score. So they're not quite the team of last year. I think they're playing a better defense. And like you said about, Jim Harbaugh, he's got a heck of a team this year. This feels like, the year. If it's not this year, I don't know when it will be, because he's got a veteran quarterback, a lot of returners. He's hosting Ohio State, a rival that he hadn't beaten yet, and one that has now a new head coach and a new quarterback. So this is kind of feels like the year for Michigan to do it if they're going to do it.
We'll switch gears now to and I totally agree with you. Like, if it's not going to be this year, it might not ever happen for Jim Harbaugh. So the biggest game here tonight, obviously, is going to be number 6 LSU at number 9 Texas, and of course Sam Dellenger, Texas's quarterback last year, said, "quote unquote, we're back." And I would say they're mostly back, but I would say if Texas is true, quote unquote, back here in college football, they win this game tonight at home. How do you see this one playing? And also, I kind of want to dive into the story you wrote as well on SI.com about that coaching search between Texas and LSU, between Tom Herman and Ed Orgeron. But what do you think about this game on the field first tonight?
Well, yeah, it's a game that is dripping with just storylines and angles, and hype has been built up for really years. I mean, these two teams haven't played in, I think it's over 50 years in a regular season game. So they border rivals. They recruit against one another. They have similar quarterbacks. They have defenses that mirror one another. Two defensive coordinators that know each other well. I mean, this is as intriguing of a matchup as there will be in college football this year. And it's at Texas. It's in Austin. I'm sure it'll be loud and crazy. LSU's new offense, that the kind of the talk of among the SEC, LSU's new offense will get a huge test. On the road it'll be loud. Can they handle it? And how well can they move the ball against a Texas defense that has some questions? I mean, lost 8 starters. So if LSU's defense can contain, I think Sam Dellenger, he's going to get his yards. He's a great football player, but they can kind of contain him in the pocket and get some pressure, contained pressure. I think LSU probably wins the game. But that new offensive for the Tigers, it'll get tested with this big road environment under the bright lights.
So if you had to pick, if you were to take one of those quarterbacks tonight, who would you prefer, Joe Burrow of LSU or Sam Dellenger of Texas?
Man, it's tight. And, I spent all week in Austin, and the talk from a lot of the coaches and players here were how similar those two guys are, as far as how, like, gritty they are and confidence, and they have that swagger, and they're great leaders, and they're smart kids, and they're kind of thick, bulky guys that can kind of run the ball and take big hits, and they're so similar. I would say the cast around Joe Burrow is better, and that's going to certainly help him out. Sam Dellenger is dealing with an issue with Texas, his running backs. I think he's got 2 scholarship running backs back there, so he'll be taking more of a load for sure.
I want to dive into the story you wrote a few days ago on SI.com, and have Ross Dellenger with us of Sports Illustrated. You wrote a story about Tom Herman, Ed Orgeron, and that wild coaching search back in 2016 for LSU. And obviously, Ed Orgeron ends up at LSU. Tom Herman ends up at Texas. Give our audience a quick summary of that story and actually how wild it is, and at least how fun it was to write that story.
Yeah, it was fun. I was a beat writer covering LSU back then 3 years ago, so I was kind of right in the middle of all that. And so I knew a lot about it even before researching the story. I knew a lot, and it was fun to do, to get people to open up and talk about how Tom Herman was almost LSU's coach, basically. Ed Orgeron was the interim coach after they fired Les Miles, and it was basically down to Ed Orgeron and Tom Herman. Who's going to be LSU's coach? And Tom had a meeting with LSU that he canceled, and by all accounts, he was kind of the favorite, and he would have probably gotten a job potentially had he gone to that meeting. And he canceled a meeting and instead met with Texas officials. They hammered out a deal, and LSU turned to Ed Orgeron, and here they are meeting on the field 3 years later.
That is crazy, and everyone has to go out and read that story. It was posted on September 2nd on SI.com. The story of Tom Herman, Ed Orgeron, and LSU's wild 2016 coaching search, written by Ross Dellenger. Ross, a couple more things before we let you go. You mentioned the coaching searches and how wild it was. I believe we talked about this last year on this show about Les Miles going back to Kansas, and if we didn't, what was your initial reaction to that? And obviously, you look at what he's done now. They had a close, I would say a close, not that impressive win last week, and they have a very intriguing game here today as well. How long do you think it takes for Les Miles to put that imprint on the Kansas Jayhawk football program?
I can't say I saw it coming, really, that Les would be at Kansas when it all happened. We broke the news on it, but I still kind of have a little. It's
one of those weird feelings why he's eating grass in Kansas now.
Right, it's very weird. It is. It's unusual, and they did not have a very impressive opening game. But at Kansas, any win, I think, any way they'll probably take, given their history. So. Les it's kind of a family affair there right now. Les has got one of his sons playing fullback, the other is a backup quarterback, I believe. It's interesting. His daughter's up there. She does a lot of media stuff, digital media stuff, and so she's up there back with her parents. So it's all the Miles family's kind of relocated to Lawrence. It's interesting, and so I'm. For Les to get to 4 wins, this year will be a success. They're dealing with some incredibly difficult scholarship situations there. They've had a lot of recruiting kind of mishaps at Kansas in the past under past coaches, and it's kind of led to some serious scholarship issues.
I never thought I would hear a day where I would hear Les Miles 4 wins equals successful season.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I know. It's crazy because I can't even remember. I don't even know in his coaching career if he's had, 4 wins or less in a season. I'd have to go back. Oklahoma State, maybe his first year, they struggled, but I don't know if they lost that many games. So he'll be there'll be some new lows probably, and Les knew that, I think, taking the job. There'll be some new lows for him at KU.
Boy, it'd be great if Les Miles in about 2 years has Kansas in contention for a Big 12 title. All of a sudden, you're talking about, I think the Kansas Jayhawks are going to make the college football playoff just because of Les Miles. That would truly be absolutely fascinating. Ross, I appreciate you joining me here this morning. You're going to be at LSU, Texas tonight.
Down
in Austin. Awesome. That's going to be that's the marquee game tonight. If you had to, I don't know if I got it out of you, but who are you picking tonight, LSU or Texas?
It's weird. I picked LSU to win straight up, and I picked Texas to cover.
Wow. All right.
Because I think it could be a really, really tight game, So, yeah, I did the old hedging, I guess, in a way.
All right. You're kind of almost spoiling what I'm going to do. I actually have that game in our pick segment coming up as well. Ross, appreciate you coming on. If people want to follow you on Twitter, what's your Twitter handle?
Yeah, you can go to @RossDellenger and SI.com.
All right, Ross Dellenger of Sports Illustrated. You can find him on SI.com. Of course, just give him a follow on Twitter @RossDellenger. Ross, appreciate you coming on, man. Hope to have you on again this season. It's always a pleasure.
All right, man. Thanks.
All right, that was Ross Dellenger of Sports Illustrated. Of course, again, you can follow him on Twitter @Ross Dellenger. That is RossDellenger. Find his stuff on SI.com. Does a great job for Sports Illustrated. All right, we're going to step aside and take a quick break. On the other side, we will have my pick segment. I'm 3-1. 3-1 so far. So if you took my advice last week, you definitely won money. Let's hope it's the same this week. Again, you can't blame me for losing money because either I'm going to win you money by getting them right, or I can win you money because you have to do the exact opposite of what I say. So I'm trying to save myself here. I will never lose you money on this show. Pick segment coming up next. It's the College Football Countdown to Kickoff show right here on 97.3 ESPN.
This is the College Football Countdown to Kickoff show with Nick Costco on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
College Football Countdown to Kickoff show right here on 97.3 ESPN. I'm your host, Nick Costco. I got a few more minutes to go before we send it out to Chris Carlin, Ray Lucas and company for the kickoff of Rutgers football. They are traveling, and they are at number 20, Iowa, here this afternoon. Kickoff set for noon Eastern time. You can catch that game right here on this very station on 97.3 ESPN. We're also going to have LSU-Texas, the marquee game of the night. That'll kick off on our station at 7 p.m., and that'll be followed by USC at Stanford. So a nice little triple header of college football today right here on a Saturday on 97.3. All right, we're going to get into our pick segment. Great stuff out of Ross Dellenger of Sports Illustrated. Again, we'll have this show posted in a little while. I'll tweet it out so you can follow me on Twitter @NickCosco59. That is NickKosko59. Give me a follow on Twitter, and I'll tweet out the YouTube link when I post the show as our quote-unquote on-demand. YouTube is great for that stuff. Isn't that nice? So we'll do that. All right, so we're going to dive into the picks now. I got about 7 minutes to go here. All right, so we were 3-1. I say we. I'm going to use the royal we here because it's just me on this show, of course. I was 3-1 last week. I'm very impressed with myself. You know what's funny? I try to bet sometimes, and usually I'm probably about 75% wrong when it comes to picking these games. My best bet of the year, I will say this, I got Tiger Woods plus 1,800. I just put $10 on him to win the Masters, and I won $180. And I was like, you know what? It's Tiger. It's the Masters. Why not? Great odds. That's the one bet I won this year that I took, and I've told my producer Josh Hennig this a couple times. I put a handful of bets on UFC fights this year. I'm always wrong. Unfortunately, I bet with my heart. Like Josh, just real quick. I bet Frankie Edgar to beat Holloway. No. I bet Cormier looking good, but then Stipe knocked him out in the fourth round.
I had money on Stipe in that match.
Yeah, see, I took those two fights, couldn't get. I'm pretty sure I bet another fight. I think I went in with my buddies. We bet Robbie Lawler over Colby Covington at UFC Newark, and we were there too. So it was one of those double whammy things where you're rooting for Robbie in the stands and you bet on him, and they both don't go. Yeah, no, it doesn't work. It doesn't work out that way.
Yeah. So my theory is I try to take all emotion out of my betting just because I know
it's only there for UFC though for some reason. I don't know why. That's why I can't bet on the Eagles.
We all have a blind spot.
I know. I can't bet on the Eagles.
Like I totally swore off baseball betting earlier this year.
I don't even want to touch baseball.
Because that became the bane for me. Like I did about 3 bets and I was like, I don't got it. I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah, no, that's
I stick with college football, NFL, MMA, and tennis, and that's it.
Yeah, and it's funny too, isn't it? So we'll dive into our picks now, and it's crazy though because I was 3 of 4 last week, so 3-1 last week, but I didn't actually bet any money on my picks, and I know if I did, I would have been 1-3 or 0-4. You know what would have happened. All right, so let's get into it now. All right, so we're going to do the marquee game first. Number 6 LSU at number 9 Texas. The line right now, LSU's a minus 6.5 point favorite on the road. You heard Ross Dellenger just before of Sports Illustrated when he was on. He said, you know what, I'm picking LSU to win outright, but Texas is going to cover, so he's quote-unquote hedging his bet a little bit. I tell you what, you could probably do that, actually, and you would win some money on that. That's a decent bet right there. LSU to win outright, but Texas is going to cover. I might take that bet, little hedging right there, but I'll tell you what. It's a close game. It's in Texas. Ross Dellenger's in Austin. You know what? I'm going to do it. Texas is back, baby. I'm going to take – it's too easy to – I mean, again, there's no easy bets. There's no guarantees. But Texas being a near full touchdown underdog at home, you got to give me Texas. Give me Texas plus 6.5 at home against LSU. That is pick number 1. Pick number 2, we have number 18, UCF, Central Florida, at Florida Atlantic. Sorry to my former youth football teammate, Ray Ellis, who plays for Florida Atlantic. I'm sorry, buddy. I can't do it. I got to take number 18, UCF, on the road, minus 13 over Florida Atlantic. Florida Atlantic just got shellacked by Ohio State last week in Justin Fields. I know they're at home, and it's a more favorable matchup, but UCF looked dominant last week. They have Brandon Wimbush at quarterback. They are not missing a beat. I wouldn't be surprised if they go undefeated, and then people are arguing for them to get to the college football playoff again. UCF, give me them, minus 13 on the road at Florida Atlantic. Pick number 3, number 21, Syracuse at Maryland. This is fascinating. The line has shifted towards Maryland. They're a 1, so this is basically a pick 'em game. They're minus 1 at home. I get they dominated last week, but come on. Syracuse on the road, plus 1, basically a pick 'em. I like Syracuse. I love what Dino Barbers has done with that program. Give me the Syracuse Orange, number 21 Syracuse, plus 1 at Maryland. Give me them. So right now, through 3 picks, we have Texas plus 6.5, UCF minus 13, Syracuse plus 1. And now finally, as we do every week, our 4th and final pick will always be the Rutgers Scarlet Knights and whatever game they are playing this afternoon or in the evening. They're at number 20, Iowa today, and this opened up actually as a 20-point spread. Iowa was minus 20 at the start of the week. It has dropped a little bit. I think people are taking Rutgers. It's now plus 18.5. I mentioned at the top of the show that I think Rutgers is going to be competitive today. I'm not picking them to beat Iowa outright. Unfortunately, I would love to see this upset today in Iowa and say, hey, Rutgers might have something brewing here in 2019. But with McLean Carter, the gunslinger, Isaiah Pacheco, Bo Melton, Raheem Blackshear, Matt Alamo, the UCLA tight end transfer, I'll tell you what, the offense a little bit more deadly this year than obviously in 2018 and maybe even 2017 as well. So I like that. The defense was more disciplined in the second half last week. Some solid form tackling. Just if you eliminate the penalties and you cut out the turnovers, Rutgers can make this very close and maybe borderline on an upset bid. But it's just too juicy to take. Rutgers plus 18.5. Give me that for pick number 4 at number 20, Iowa. Put your money on Rutgers today. And again, if you lose today, don't blame me because you're supposed to be doing the opposite of what I'm saying if all my picks are wrong. But if I'm right, then I'm right and I won you money anyway. So it's your choice. But either way, I'm not wrong. Just remember that. I'm not wrong either way, whether I'm 0-4 or 4-0. And that's the beauty of it, folks. This is my show. I can do what I want with this one. So I can do what I want with my picks. By the way, quick breaking news on the Rutgers game. Looks like safety Kavion Merriweather for Iowa, their safety, he's expected to miss the ball game today. Interesting. I believe we have 1 minute left. I don't hear a music bed. Maybe I'm just a minute off here. I am a minute off. Thank you, Josh. All right, so we have 2 minutes to go. How about this? Minute and a half. A little extra time. A little extra time with me today. How about that? Enjoy it, folks. So, again, we'll go over on picks one more time. Texas plus 6.5. UCF minus 13. Syracuse plus 1. And Rutgers plus 18.5. Put your money on those 4 games. 3-1 last week. Let's go 4-0 this week, folks. Let's be 7-1 going into week 3. I would absolutely love that. Again, marquee game of the night, LSU and Texas. Texas will cover, as I said, by my picks. Do I dare pick them outright? Tom Herman over Ed Orgeron. You heard Ross Dellenger before. Wild coaching search. Tom Herman should have been the LSU head coach, but ended with Ed Orgeron. You know what? Texas is back. We're going with Texas at home. The Longhorns will get that win outright over LSU tonight. Put your money on that.
I already said yesterday on the air that one of my six-pack was the Texas and the points. But I also threw a side bet on Texas to win outright.
Okay.
Just because I wanted to see. Because, look, it's in Texas. You can't discount that.
Isn't college football so much better when Texas is great?
They're their best quarterback in 10 years.
I'll tell you what. If they win tonight, put them in the top 5 next week. I got that. Let's do that. All right. Rutgers and Iowa coming up. Thanks to Ross Dellenger of Sports Illustrated for joining me. Thanks to Josh Henning for pushing all of the buttons and chiming in a little bit and playing some great DJ music as well. Thanks to Billy Schwein for letting me on 15 minutes early. Fantasy football stuff and, a little promo coming up in a couple weeks. We'll teach that in a few weeks. I'm Nick Costco. This is the College Football Countdown to Kickoff show right here on 97.3 ESPN.